Do you make New Year's resolutions every year and within a few weeks or months you completely fall off and maybe even completely forget about them? Maybe you like making goals and intentions for yourself throughout the year, but still things don't stick. You can't keep them going and can't keep yourself on track to meet that goal. Once I found a diary of mine from when I was like 12 years old, and in it was a New Year's resolution that still resonates with me today, and that was to do the things I need to do. I've always found that really difficult. Now, I want to talk about a few different ways and reasons that your New Year's resolutions or your goals and intentions just in general might not be working out for you and what we can do about them. I'm Kim Pirano. I am a transformational life coach, hypnotherapist, and doctor of acupuncture and Chinese medicine. I help people reach their goals, live the lives that they want to live while navigating major life changes, chronic illness and pain, and other things that life tends to throw at us. So let's jump in. So one of the major blocks that many of my clients experience, and I've experienced as well, is that there is an unconscious resistance or fear that's cutting you off at the knees. And sometimes this fear or resistance can be around actually doing the work to get to your goal, right? If your goal is to run a marathon this year, that's going to take a lot of hard work. You're going to have to give up some free time. You're going to go through the discomfort of your body doing new things. So sometimes our fear is related to the work we have to do to get to the goal, but I find more often than not that fear, that unconscious resistance and fear, is actually about attaining the goal in the first place. So if I get a new job, I get promoted at work, my goal is to get promoted, make $1 million, like become famous, whatever it is, attaining that goal changes your life significantly, especially when it's a big goal. So we need to look at and unpack what these underlying fears and resistance are, and just bringing awareness to them helps us start to shift them. So if we're unconscious of them, we can't really do anything about it. But once we start to become more conscious about them, then we can really start to change and shift things. So a journaling prompt that I like to use with my clients is we kind of flip this on its head and we go, I absolutely do not want to run a marathon this year because, and then list out 20, 30 things as to why you don't want that to happen. Sometimes flipping this positive into a negative will help our brain kind of unravel what those underlying unconscious fears are. So I don't want to run a marathon this year because I'm going to have to get up early. I might get injured. People might look at me weird because I'm really committed to this thing. I want to get promoted this year. Right? So we flip that into, I absolutely don't want to get promoted this year. And that's because I'm going to have to really work hard. I'm going to have to show up at work more significantly than I am. I'm going to have more responsibilities that I'm not sure I'm prepared about. So do that as a journaling exercise. Take it from, I want this to happen, turn it into, I absolutely don't want this to happen. And here's the reasons why. It will help us give us some insight to what's going on unconsciously, subconsciously that's surrounding those blockages. The next hiccup in making a resolution stick, I find, can be that your resolution itself is actually out of alignment with your authentic nature and your authentic desires. So lots of times we make resolutions, goals for ourselves based on our ego. And the ego wants to keep you safe, and it wants everything to stay the same. It thinks that safety equals staying the same. Now, we know that this is not necessarily true, right? Fundamentally, we can change and still be totally safe, but the ego thinks that if you change, if things change, we're not going to be safe anymore. So we need to start getting to the root of what those authentic desires truly are. Your ego is running a program from when you were in childhood. Things that were safe for you in childhood, the ego thinks are still safe for you now, even though those same dynamics or threats or whatever was going on in childhood doesn't apply now anymore. So if you were a girl who really liked building birdhouses and your parents thought that was too boyish, you weren't allowed to build birdhouses, you had to play with dolls, we stuffed that desire, that authentic desire, down into our subconscious nature. Now what we really want to do is build stuff, right? We want to work with power tools and build stuff and explore that creative side of ourselves, but our ego thinks that's unsafe to do because it was unsafe to do as a child. So when we start unpacking, like, what are these authentic desires? What do I really actually want? Is where we can start to adjust the resolution to match our truth. And one way that we can start to look into this is journaling around, like, just close your eyes and think for a moment about what it would feel like and what it would be like if money and other people were not a factor. Like, you're living your life just for you. Nothing else matters. Nothing in the whole world matters except for whatever it is you want to do. Money is no object. Other people's judgment or the ability, what is that you really want to do? And maybe we come out with some really outlandish things, but they're going to kind of point us in the right direction as to what that is. A common resolution I hear is like about weight loss or fitness. So what would be, that seems to come from a place of wanting more health. And maybe that is true, but perhaps it isn't, right? So if we really tune in, like, nobody else is a factor in this, how do I really feel about it? So getting really clear on what those intentions and values that you have and what you want to call into your life are will help you make resolutions and goals that fit that trajectory of who you're becoming. The next roadblock to actualizing your New Year's resolutions is that resolution, intention, or goal is actually totally not realistic. It's not realistic, or it's not specific enough. So this might be like, I want to lose 100 pounds in 6 months. I want to make $5 million this year, and I don't have a job at all, right? So we have resolutions that can be attainable and some that are going to be really hard, and being hard is okay, and some that are just absolutely kind of out of the range. So what we want to do is start to get things to be more specific if you're not specific enough, right? Like, I want to feel good. That's a great resolution. Let's make it more specific. How do we want to feel good? I want to feel good in my relationships and I want to feel really safe there. That's something that's a little more specific and doable. Things that are kind of more on the out of range side of things. I want to make $5 million this year. Is that possible? Sure, it's possible. How are we going to do it? So another thing that I like to do is to help people break down intentions or goals into smaller, more digestible steps and pieces. So you want to make $5 million this year? Great. That starts with something much smaller. So what's that smaller piece? How can we break this down into more manageable pieces? And another thing that I really like to do with clients is kind of coaching away from goal setting as like tangible, finite objects in the first place. So instead of saying, I want to make $5 million this year, like, I want to grow my income exponentially is a very different way of phrasing that. I want to lose 100 pounds this year. We could shift into like, I want to take myself on a journey of safe weight loss. Those are very different tones and different things. And when we strive for some goals, they might set us up for problems later on, right? Like, this sort of how eating disorders come about. If we are dead set on losing 100 pounds this year, we're doing it in a really unsafe way, that's setting us up for problems later on. So let's clarify what the goal is, make it very specific, get it into digestible steps, and then commit to the path of the goal instead of the goal itself. So we're committing to walking that walk, doing things that are consistent throughout that process so that we can go from point A to point B, or at the very least in the direction of point B, so that we can start to get somewhere. Our next block to reaching our New Year's resolutions is one that everybody absolutely hates, and that's that you need more emotional resilience. You need more resilience. You need a higher ability to tolerate discomfort. I hate to break it to you, but this is fundamentally true of life. If we want to achieve anything, it's not going to be easy. Anything worthwhile is usually not a very simple path and a super straightforward, easy thing to do. So it can be really easy to stick to our plan or our goals for the first couple of weeks, the first couple of months. But as soon as things start to get difficult, to get hard, where we start backsliding a little bit, then moving forward a little bit and doing this, where it's not this very straight trajectory, we love to bail out at that point in time. And This is where emotional resiliency comes in. This is where understanding that things are going to be uncomfortable, that I'm not going to feel super great while I am training for a marathon sometimes. When you have to run 20 miles in a weekend, like that's not the most pleasant thing to do unless you absolutely love it, then good for you. So one thing that we can do to start developing emotional resiliency is start kind of challenging ourselves with things that don't really matter. There was somebody who did a project that was like getting rejected every day. So like going up to a stranger on the street and asking him if you could borrow his car for the weekend, right? He's probably going to say no to you. That means you're getting rejected and you're starting to build that resiliency around not getting things that you want. If we're starting to build resiliency, we can also challenge ourselves physically. Maybe that's with a tough workout. Maybe it's with cold exposure. There's all sorts of different things that we can do to start challenging ourselves. Maybe that's just speaking up in a meeting or in a relationship that you have, where we're going to actually say what we really want to. We're going to say, oh, this makes me so nervous to do, but I'm going to do it anyways. So start doing those things that make you a little bit nervous, that make you a little bit uncomfortable in the safest ways you can, so that we can start building that emotional resiliency so that we can step forward more consistently instead of giving up in the middle of something. And this last piece is a little bit tied with the first point about your goals being out of alignment with your authentic self. And that's that your goals are about external validation and approval. This is usually where we're sort of acting out and taking on the goals of somebody else, right? Your mom wanted you to become a doctor, so you're in school to become a doctor, even though you really love art, right? Maybe you really want to drive a Mercedes because that's what you think other people will respect you for, right? We can think about all of these different goals and different things that we just do in life as habits because of that external approval. So when we're setting goals, intentions, New Year's resolutions, making sure that we're choosing things that are about an internal satisfaction versus having to get something from external can go a long way. So like, okay, you want to drive a Mercedes. You want this really expensive fancy car. Cool. What does that give you? It gives you respect, however you think of that. So if we're getting respect because we drive a nice car, like perhaps there might be another way to get that. So thinking about what things you want and what those things might be giving you and what other things might give you the same results can get us back to an intention that actually matches your authentic self. That's actually about who you really are. And another journaling type exercise that you can do around this is like, what's in it for me? So if like we want to buy a really fancy car, like what's in it for me? And then we can list out all of those things that happen because of having that fancy car. And then we can take a look at that list and see where else they might show up in our life, or where else we might be able to just create those out of how we're interacting with people, so that we don't need to have a fancy car to have respect. We can just have respect because we're setting that up in our conversations and relationships. And that's what we're accepting as part of our relationships instead of accepting less than that. There is definitely a lot of work that we can do to hone in what types of resolutions or goals are actually going to work for you, ones that are actually achievable and align with your authentic self. So if you're looking to find goals that work for you and find new ways to actualize those goals, bring them into reality, co-create your life, and you're looking for a little help with that, I am booking complimentary discovery calls, which also include a free shadow work session so that you can see how we're going to work together and get a little taste of what's in your shadow, what might be actually really blocking you from creating the life that you deserve and the life that you want.